having to do with chemical sensitivities. I met a lady in San Luis Obispo many, many years ago, and I was aware, because she made it very clear to me, she is chemically injured. She actually runs a home for people who are chemically injured. So if you actually know somebody who's chemically injured and you need some kind of support group for that, let us know, because we would let you know there are groups, there are many, many people who have these issues, and they don't know who to turn to or who could help them. But if you have these type of issues, let us know. We will connect you with those type groups. This particular lady has done a tremendous amount of research on chemical sensitivity, pesticide exposure, exposure to environmental conditions. She told me a story about, I remember in Los Osos once, I was at a soccer game for my kids, and we were all enjoying the soccer game, but we noticed behind us that the hill was on fire. Well, this is very unusual on a Saturday morning, but we turned around and saw this fire up on the hill, and I thought, well, that's interesting, that's unusual. And we turned around and watched our kids play the soccer game, and a half hour later we turned around and just happened to notice this fire is pretty good size actually on this hill in Los Osos, up behind Cabrillo Estates and kind of towards Montana de Oro, if anybody knows where that is. Well, a half hour later we look back there, this fire is quite large. And long story short, this fire ends up huge, and pretty soon nobody's watching the kids on the soccer field anymore, because we've all turned around to say, this is a huge fire. What is this fire doing in Los Osos? Okay, so the fire raged for about a day or so on a Saturday morning, but I got to read in the paper the next day that this particular customer, and she is an activist in San Luis Obispo, she's probably the most outspoken person on chemical sensitivities, and that the community needs to be aware that people do have chemical sensitivities, whether you want to admit it or not. That fire almost killed her, meaning the smoke from, and it turned out it was a planned fire in Los Osos that got out of control, but all the smoke from this planned burn, the wind takes it straight over San Luis Obispo, right over her home. She ended up in the hospital nearly dead from her exposure to the smoke from this fire. What she explained in the article in the newspaper is that there are people with sensitivities. She's aware of many of them, including herself. She's not saying you can't do a planned burn or a controlled burn, but that if you're going to do something like that, just let us know. Those of us who know we have the sensitivity, we will get out of the path of the fire. We will leave town for the weekend. If you know you're going to do a pesticide spray, and we know that we are in an agricultural community surrounded by broccoli, strawberries, vineyards. We know they spray for these things. We're not, we're all aware of this. People have sensitivities. All they're asking is, let us know when you're going to do this. We will leave the area. We know how the wind blows. You'll kill those of us who are sensitive to this. So that's this lady's background. She is very aware of the effects of pesticides, smoke, on herself especially, and those people that she cares for. Well, when I talked to her about the Higg Watermax and its ability to remove chlorine, other organics out of the water, as well as the hardness, she was obviously very interested. This is critical for her and her household, because she's been fighting this in her household. The interesting part of that conversation is I had just read an article that day about carbons and different types of carbons and how carbons work and qualities of carbon and manufacturing processes for making carbons of various qualities, quantities, and effectivenesses for removing chlorine, chloramines, other organics out of the water. The article was probably a little more chemically advanced than I truly understood, but it made me aware that there's differences. Well, she asked me very specific questions on the Higg Watermax, because this lady knew more about it at that point in time than I did. And when I understood how important the answer to these questions were to her, given her sensitivities, I will admit, a little wishy-washy with my answers. I'm usually very clear, very confident. I know exactly what this machine does. I know exactly what it doesn't do. I know exactly what you can expect. I know exactly what you cannot expect. Well, her questions, and because of this article that I had just read literally 24 hours prior, I thought, I do not want to be at all vague about an answer to this lady given her particular sensitivities. Well, my concern of being very accurate in my answer, she perceived as wishy-washy, unconfident, and I'm trying to remember the word, but she did not perceive me as totally competent in the area. She literally called the manufacturer in Ohio the next day to, I'll say complain, but voice her concerns about a rep in her area that could not adequately answer her questions on carbon, what can carbon do, and so forth. This, because she made the call to corporate, they always follow through with every complaint, if you will. And this one was literally directed at me, and I'm the dealer in Los Osos, California, and it was actually me that had been to her house and appeared to be inadequate in my answers. I knew that the reason I'd been inadequate was because I want to be crystal clear on what I said. So I went and saw her the next day. She invited me back in, and I told her the reason my answers were vague is because I was clearly aware of how important this was to you, your sensitivities, your particularly unique situation. I brought her a copy of the article that I wanted her to read this. I said, this is why my answers were vague. There were things that were beyond my control, but it was very, very important to me and to all of us in Los Osos dealership that we always tell people exactly the truth, nothing more, nothing less. But I left her that article, which is about a 6-page article just on carbon and the effects of carbon and the strengths and weaknesses of carbon and different carbons and carbons from different manufacturers and carbons from different countries. It was a very thorough article. That this is why I was vague in my answers. It's not because I'm vague in my conviction. It's not because I'm vague in my understanding how the machine works or what it does. My concern was this article heightened my awareness of things that were beyond my control. I think she very much appreciated that. She did research for probably another 3 months, and about 3 months later, she calls back and says, I want you to install the Hague WaterMax. I've done all my research. I know exactly which one I want for my home. And after that much exhaustive research from a lady who this is critical, this is not a luxury, this is not a nicety, this is critical to her health, she chose the Hague WaterMax. And I know she's been very happy, and I'm very glad that she expressed her feelings about this vague salesperson who came to her home, but it was only out of concern for her that I appeared vague or inadequate. But I know now today she's very happy with how I treated and handled her questions.